I never thought that saying no would end with my son's hand across my face. Not once. 12 times. In my own kitchen. In his house. But my blood built the bones of that boy. And now I stood there, cheek stinging, lip bleeding, while his wife Taylor leaned against the island, swirling Merlot like she was watching bad theater. "I just can't help you," I had said. That's all. No drama, no raised voice. Just a firm refusal to sell my tiny, lived-in, rent-controlled apartment to cover their $180,000 in debts. Business loan, credit cards, something about a failed protein shake startup. Whatever it was, they wanted me to bleed for it. I wouldn't. That's when Taylor smirked and said, maybe a few slaps will knock some generosity into her. She giggled like it was cute, like this was normal. Then Daniel stood. I didn't even flinch, not at first. I thought he wouldn't, but he would. And he did. Slap, slap, slap. I lost count after 6, but I didn't fall. I stood there, not out of pride, out of shock, because that wasn't my son. That was someone else, or maybe it was him, and I just refused to see it until now. Taylor sipped her wine and said, "She's just being dramatic. It's only a slap." Only. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I touched my face and looked at the man I had raised. The man I had fed, bathed, comforted. The man whose nightmares I soothed, whose rent I paid more than once, who called me mama when he needed help but old lady when I asked questions. He didn't look sorry. He looked annoyed, embarrassed I hadn't just agreed and gone quietly. "You're being selfish," he said. I laughed, just once, soft and dry. Then I turned around, picked up my keys, and walked out the front door. No purse, no suitcase, no plan. Just bruises, silence, and the last shred of love I had for him drying up like blood on concrete. He hit me for the first time at 62. And for the first time in my life, I saw my future with terrifying clarity. He wanted to destroy me, financially, legally, physically, but he forgot who taught him how to fight. It was me, and I was just getting started. It started with a fire, just a small one, faulty outlet in the laundry closet. My apartment filled with smoke, the wiring fried. No injuries, just damage and insurance paperwork. Daniel insisted I come stay with them while repairs were handled. "It's just temporary, Mom. You'll have your space." That was March 3rd. They greeted me with smiles, a new towel set, fresh sheets, lavender on the nightstand. Taylor even cooked the first night. Salmon, under-seasoned, but polite. I told myself not to be suspicious. I told myself they were growing up, stepping up, but the rot showed early. "You really should downsize," Taylor said one afternoon, passing me a glass of cucumber water I never asked for. 600 square feet isn't exactly aging-friendly. She smiled like it was helpful, like I hadn't lived independently longer than she'd been alive. 2 weeks in, Daniel walked into my room without knocking, holding my mail in one hand and my medication bottle in the other. "You mix these up," he said. I hadn't. 3 weeks in, Taylor told the neighbor I was staying for clarity reasons, just until she gets back on her feet. She whispered like I was a drunk aunt, not her mother-in-law who still paid her own electric bill. The guest room door stopped closing properly after week 4. I don't know if they loosened the hinge or if it was just the way the house shifted at night, but I stopped changing with the light on. Daniel said they'd added me to their emergency contact forms at the bank, just in case, but wouldn't let me see the paperwork. Subtle. That's how it began. A towel moved from hook to floor, a vase missing from my nightstand. My bathrobe, used and still damp, left draped on the wrong chair. They weren't stealing. Not yet. They were trespassing. Testing. I didn't fight it. I played slow, quiet, observant. Because when you're older, silence is your sharpest knife. People fill it with their plans. "You're just wasting equity sitting on that old place," Taylor said in April. "You could help so much. Family means sacrifice." Sacrifice, I thought, folding my laundry while she sipped espresso on a velvet settee I helped them finance last year. That word stuck in my throat like a bone. They didn't mean family, they meant leverage. By May, they were asking about my passwords. "Just to help sort your digital stuff." By June, Daniel asked if I'd consider moving in permanently. It'd be easier for everyone. That's when I knew. They weren't offering me shelter. They were casing a claim. And I was about to become a target in my own bloodline. There's a special kind of humiliation in being laughed at behind your back and knowing it. I heard it through the vent. Daniel had a friend over, someone from work. They were in the living room drinking beer. I was upstairs, folding towels. My name came up. "She still uses a flip phone," Daniel said. The friend laughed. Then Daniel added, "She thinks apps are a type of appetizer." More laughter. My face went hot. But the punchline came from Taylor. "She's like a cat with a debit card. Cute, but you can't trust her with money." I sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the towel in my lap. Just a towel. Soft, beige, folded. But my hands were trembling like I'd just heard a death sentence. And in a way, I had. From then on, every interaction came laced with condescension. Daniel would unplug the microwave before I used it, just in case I forgot how. Taylor offered to digitize my address book and accidentally deleted it. My late sister's number, gone. The smallest things started disappearing. The antique teacup from my mother, cracked, then tossed. My knitting bag, replaced with a simpler one. One night, I opened the linen closet and found my heirloom quilt, handmade in 1967, missing. Taylor shrugged. "Oh, that old thing? I thought it was a rag. Donated it to Goodwill." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. But something went still in me that day. Cold. Hard. I stopped using the laundry room and started hand-washing my underwear. I stopped sleeping with the door open. I started photographing every drawer in the guest room every morning. Then, I heard it. The final straw. Taylor was on the phone. I'd come down early to get coffee, but stopped when I heard her voice from the kitchen. She was on speaker, talking to someone. A broker, I think. "Once she sells that apartment, we'll be free and clear," she said. There was a pause. Then she laughed. "No, she doesn't know. But trust me, she will. Daniel's gonna convince her. Or we'll just push a little harder." I backed up the stairs so slowly I barely breathed. I sat on the bed for 3 hours without moving. The sun crept across the floor. My coffee grew cold. They were planning it, not hoping, not suggesting. Planning. To squeeze me until I cracked. To steal what I'd built with my own tired hands. The apartment, my savings, maybe more. But here's what they forgot. You can't con someone who's been poor. I've survived on saltines and spike before. And this time, I had more than just instincts. I had receipts. They thought I was just an old woman with memories and a modest apartment. They didn't know about the house. Years ago, before Daniel met Taylor, I helped him buy his first property, a 2-bedroom fixer-upper in Yorba Linda. His credit was a disaster, and the down payment was a stretch, so we agreed. I'd go on the deed, help with the loan, and he'd buy me out when he got back on his feet. He never did. Instead, he met Taylor, and after the wedding, they transferred the house into a family trust, their trust. He told me it was just for tax benefits. He swore it didn't change ownership. I remember sitting at the kitchen table while he passed me a pen and slid the document over. "You don't even have to sign anything," he said. "It's already done." That's where he slipped. Because I never signed off. He forgot that. And I never forgot I was still on that deed. 2 weeks before the slap, I went to the county recorder's office, just to check. I told the clerk my name. She tapped at the keyboard, then turned the screen around. There it was. Property ID 082114. O. Owner, Daniel Walker and Marie Walker. Marie. My legal name. Not mom, not old lady. Owner. The trust was there too, but sloppily done. They'd filed a grant deed, but never followed through with the quitclaim. He'd assumed the transfer was complete, but legally, I still had a claim. A big one. The house had tripled in value since he bought it. $2 million now, easy. And half of that, by the letter of the law, was mine. So while Taylor was measuring my apartment in her head and dreaming up paint colors, I was printing copies of old deeds and tax records. They thought they were the only ones playing chess, but I'd already moved 3 pawns, a bishop, and had a rook waiting in silence. I said nothing to them. Not when Daniel told me he'd talked to a realtor about my place. Not when Taylor asked if I had a will updated for modern times. Not even when I found a printed checklist in the kitchen drawer labeled "Steps to Transition Mom's Property." I waited for the moment they'd feel most powerful, when their cruelty peaked and they thought they had me boxed in. Because nothing's sweeter than flipping the board when they think they've won. And I was going to flip it with facts, with law, with a signature I never gave. The house they thought was theirs? It wasn't. They didn't just slap me, they woke me. Maria Tran had been my estate lawyer for 22 years. She was the kind of woman who made silence feel like a loaded weapon, calm, precise, never rushed. When I called her on March 11th, I didn't lead with emotion. I led with facts. "Maria, I need you to pull property records for 1136 Sycamore Lane. And I need you to be brutal." She didn't ask questions. Not right away, just said, "Give me 48 hours. She called me back in 6. "They never removed you," she said, voice sharp with disgust. "Not properly. The trust paperwork is cosmetic, window dressing. You still hold legal title. Which means any financial move they've made using that house is built on sand." I didn't speak. I just exhaled slowly, not relief. "Focus," Maria continued. "I've also pulled loan records. Daniel's been sloppy. They used your name to secure a business line 3 years ago. I'm guessing without your knowledge. They had a fake signature, a lie on paper." My mouth was dry. "Is it enough?" She didn't hesitate. "It's quiet title fraud. And we can flip the table. But we'll have to do it loud." I closed my eyes. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been clenching my fists until I opened them and saw half moons pressed into my palms. "I'm ready." Maria laid out the plan. Step 1, collect every document, deeds, emails, anything that tied me to that house or showed fraud. Step 2, notarize a sworn affidavit of ownership and dispute the trust. Step 3, initiate a quiet title action to legally restore full control to me. Step 4, if fraud could be proven, force debt liability back onto them. Her voice, always even, dipped into something steelier. "If we do this, they'll know. It won't be subtle." "Good," I said. "Let them feel it." Because I wasn't just trying to protect myself anymore. I wanted them to feel exposed, vulnerable. The way they made me feel, the day he raised his hand. Maria paused. "There's more." Of course there was. "There's a POA filing in Orange County from 2 years ago. Power of attorney, signed with your name. But I never—" "I know," she said. "We'll get a copy." I hung up and sat very still. The room buzzed with the soft whine of the refrigerator, the ticking clock above the stove, the breath I held without knowing it. They forged my name. They gambled on me being too old, too scared, too quiet. But I had a lawyer, a sharp one. And the woman they underestimated? She had just declared war. April 2nd. I was in the kitchen making tea when Taylor tossed it on the counter like junk mail. "More old lady paperwork," she said, smirking as she scrolled through her phone. But something about it made me pause. No postmark, just my name, in neat block letters, and my apartment address as the recipient. Not this house, the one under repair, the one they wanted me to sell. I opened it slowly, careful not to rip anything. Inside was a single sheet, durable power of attorney, filed with the county recorder's office. Signed, dated, stamped, my name, my signature. But I hadn't signed a thing, not for that apartment, not for anyone. I sat down hard at the dining table, the cheap chandelier above me casting warped reflections on the glossy page. I read the signature again. The W curved wrong. The middle stroke was too tall. Someone had copied it from memory, not muscle. I looked at the notary stamp. A mobile service. Registered in Irvine. Not someone I'd ever used. No phone number, no witness listed. Sloppy. It didn't matter that it was obviously forged. What mattered was why it existed. Because someone had submitted this to a bank or title office. Someone was preparing to move money or claim authority over my property, the very thing they'd been pushing me to sell. That night, I waited until the house was quiet. I pulled out my lockbox from the guest closet, birth certificate, passport, old tax forms. I laid my real signature next to the fake one, not even close. The next morning, I handed the envelope and my evidence to Maria. She took one look and nodded. "This is what I was hoping we'd find. This is a felony," I said. "It's also a gift," she replied. That stunned me. "A gift?" She tapped the forged POA. "This proves intent. Now we're not just fighting for your share of the house, we're protecting you from financial fraud. We'll use this to launch a full title defense." And then she leaned in slightly. "It also opens the door to asset recovery." Asset recovery. They thought I'd be scared of that word. But all I felt was clarity. Because they'd forged my name to steal my future. Now I was coming for theirs. They counted on me being careless. They thought age dulled your memory, blurred your handwriting, made you soft. But I kept records the way other people kept grudges. Detailed, dated, and ready. That weekend, while Daniel and Taylor went wine tasting in Temecula, paid for, no doubt, with someone else's suffering, I spread every legal document I had across the guest room floor like a war map. Old tax filings, lease agreements, my last updated will, a notarized statement from my bank in 2018 when I added multi-factor authorization specifically to prevent misuse. I even dug out my voter registration card from the election before Taylor ever joined our lives. At the center of it all, my signature. 12 variations across 2 decades, slanted right, sharp tail on the R, consistent pressure, no loop above the I. I printed out the forged POA. Taylor had tried to bury in bureaucratic sloppiness. It looked like it had been traced by someone who half-remembered cursive. I scanned and highlighted the differences in red. Then I took photos of everything, compiled a digital folder, and backed it up twice. Once on a flash drive, once in cloud storage under a password Daniel would never guess. 1978, Joan of Arc. Monday morning, I delivered it all to Maria in a manila folder with a Post-it on top. "Let's begin." She looked up from the forged POA and raised an eyebrow. "You built a stronger file in 72 hours than most forensic investigators do in 2 weeks. I shrugged. "I've always been good with receipts." She smiled. "Not out of politeness, out of respect." With my affidavit in hand and the signature discrepancies documented, Maria prepared our case for the first motion, a quiet title action. That would legally challenge Daniel and Taylor's claim over the $2 million house. It would force a judge to determine rightful ownership and reveal every forged signature in court. "They'll panic," Maria said, "and they'll escalate." "I'm counting on it," I replied, "because here's the thing no one tells you about growing older. You stop being surprised by cruelty, but you start learning how to sharpen it into something useful. Every dig, every microaggression, every time Taylor looked me in the eye and called me forgetful, I was cataloging it. Not emotionally, legally. They built their empire on the assumption I'd be too tired, too passive, too sentimental. But I wasn't sentimental anymore. I was surgical. And I had just filed the first cut, April 8th. They tried to put me in a care home. Not gently, not out of concern, strategically. Daniel came home early from work, dressed like it was casual Friday, jeans, sneakers, a smile that didn't match his eyes. He handed me a pamphlet like he was offering a dinner menu. "Just take a look," he said. "It's got great reviews." Taylor stood by the stairs, arms crossed, watching my reaction like a cat with a mouse that hadn't twitched yet. "I don't need assisted living," I said calmly. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. Calm was the only weapon I needed in that moment. Daniel forced a laugh. No, it's not about that. Just peace and space. For everyone." Taylor chimed in. "We thought it'd be nice for you. Time to focus on you." She always used you when she meant get out. That's when I saw them. 2 black suitcases by the door, my suitcases. My initials still stitched on the handle straps. Packed, zipped, waiting. You went through my things, I said. Taylor blinked. We helped you. My jaw clenched. Where are my documents? Silence. That's when it hit me. They hadn't just packed clothes. They were trying to bury the case, hide the originals, disrupt the paper trail. I walked to the foyer, unzipped the larger bag, and rifled through it with shaking hands. No flash drive, no file folder. Just blouses, toothpaste, and a planner I hadn't used since 2020. You can't do this, I said, voice low. Daniel's tone dropped. You're creating chaos. You don't even know what you're involved in. I know exactly what I'm involved in, I said. I know about the POA, the fake notary, the shell loan. His face went pale. Taylor stepped forward. You're confused, she said, sharp now. No more fake warmth. You've been under a lot of stress. Maybe it's time to let people who care about you take over. I turned to her slowly. You don't care about me. You care about what's in my name. She blinked. No comeback. Not even a smirk this time. I walked to the staircase and climbed every step like it was a march. Upstairs, I retrieved the backup flash drive from inside the lining of my old purse. I'd stitched it in myself, because sometimes paranoia is just pattern recognition. Downstairs, I heard the door slam. Their car peeled out of the driveway minutes later. I stood at the window. They weren't backing off. They were preparing for war. And now, so was I. The next morning, I went hunting. Not for emotion, not for clarity, for proof. I started with the junk drawer, the one in their kitchen that Taylor insisted on keeping aesthetic, which meant nothing useful. But I found an old iPad at the bottom, wedged under charger cables, and a crumpled Crate & Barrel receipt. The screen was cracked. The password? Easy. Daniel's birthday. I opened the email app first, and there it was, like rot beneath fresh paint, an unread notification from Luxor Travel. Subject, final confirmation, Cancun resort booking. Nearly $6,000. Dates lined up perfectly with the week they told me they were on a work retreat. I cross-checked the charge against a credit card statement I'd already pulled weeks earlier, one tied to an account I'd forgotten even existed. My name's still on it, apparently. The monthly statement listed $17, $940 in charges over 3 months. Saks, Hermes, Tesla service, 1 charge from a spa in Napa, 2 people, couples package. None of it was mine. I printed each line item from their office printer while Taylor was out at bar, and Daniel sulked in the garage. By noon, I had a full stack. Then came the bigger hit. Buried in Daniel's home admin folder, a digital copy of a home equity line of credit request, not for their house. For mine, my apartment, my name as collateral. A $300,000 loan application, half filled, never submitted. But the intent was burned into the page. They were preparing to sell my future piece by piece before I even had the chance to rebuild it. And still, somehow, it got worse. Taylor had scanned one of my utility bills from my apartment and attached it to an email titled, Verification for Co-Owner Transfer, a transfer. She wasn't just planning to convince me. She was trying to replace me. I stared at the screen until my hands went cold. This wasn't financial desperation. This was precision theft. Their tone at dinner, the backhanded kindness, the unasked-for help with my mail. None of it was clumsy or emotional. It was practiced, calculated. And I had it all, now backed up, labeled, time-stamped. Maria would know what to do next. But me? I needed a moment. Not to cry, that was gone. I needed to remember who the hell I was before I let these two convince me I was fragile. They had a trail of receipts. But so did I. And mine ended in court. Maria called just after 6 p.m. Her voice was steady but clipped. You need to come in. Tonight. I didn't ask questions. I drove straight to her office, papers still warm from their printer, Daniel's emails still open on my flash drive like a confession. Maria met me in the lobby. She had a folder under her arm, thick with tabs. "There's something you need to see," she said. "I found the house deed. I know I'm still on it." She shook her head. "Not the Sycamore house. Another one. Different file, different name." She laid the folder open on the conference table. I leaned over and froze. At the top of the page, M.L. Carter Holdings, LLC. Owner, Marie L. Carter, my maiden name. Registered agent address, their current home. I stared at it like it was a trap. Because it was. They'd created a shell company, in my name, then transferred the house into that company without telling me. Daniel didn't just borrow against my name. He built a fraud structure using it. Maria flipped to the next page. A business loan application. Amount, $415,000. Secured by the LLC, with Taylor listed as managing officer. "It defaulted," she said, 18 months ago. My throat went dry. Why didn't the bank come after me? They couldn't, not directly. The LLC insulated them, for now. But the real punch came last. "Legally," Maria said, her voice quieter now. "Your name's still entangled. You're exposed. If the lender sues or tries to pierce the LLC veil, you're on the hook." I couldn't breathe for a moment. My maiden name, my real name, used like a stolen passport. So if I hadn't found this, they'd let it all fall on you. I sat back slowly. The scale of it hit like concrete to the chest. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was premeditated, structured, signed. My own son had built a bomb under my financial life and waited for it to go off. Taylor laughed when I said no to their debts. Now I knew why. They never needed my permission. They just needed my silence. And I almost gave it to them. Almost. Maria closed the folder. "We can fight this. We have time. But this makes everything more urgent." I nodded. My voice was gone, but my resolve had never been sharper. Daniel had slapped me once. But this was the real bruise, and they were going to feel it back. I moved into a motel on May 2nd, not because I wanted space, because I needed safety. They didn't kick me out, not with words. They just changed the locks on the guest bathroom, disconnected the internet, moved my laundry basket into the garage. Taylor stopped speaking to me altogether. Daniel only texted. One line, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." So I left. No scene, no goodbye. Just packed a duffel with what they hadn't boxed already, grabbed the envelope of documents, and walked out past the hydrangeas I planted last spring. The motel was beige, with stale air and hard towels. The window looked out onto a chevron. I slept with one eye open, my purse against my chest, and the flash drive tucked inside my shoe. They still had everything else. The quilt my mother made before her hands gave out. My wedding photos, the real ones, not the reprinted album I kept at home. The originals were in a box in their garage, taped shut and labeled old junk. They had my laptop, my desktop computer, even my mug, the one with the bluebirds, the only thing I drank from for 15 years. All of it was locked away in a garage I technically owned half of. But ownership didn't matter when the keypad only took codes Daniel controlled. I sat on the motel bed, knees pulled up, staring at the wall. A brown stain on the ceiling looked like a thumbprint, or a warning, and I cried. Not loud, not desperate, just steady, like something inside had cracked open and didn't know how to close again. This wasn't a movie. There was no triumphant music, no sudden courage. Just a woman in her 60s, alone in a motel with paperwork and a stolen identity. I hadn't told anyone. Not my sister, not my bridge club, not even my neighbor, Sheila, who once brought me soup when I had a cough that lasted too long. I didn't want pity. I wanted justice. But in that moment, all I had was grief. Grief for the son I'd raised, who had once cried in my arms because a goldfish died. Grief for the silence between us now, not even angry, just empty. Grief for the things I'd given, the sacrifices I made, the years I traded for love that turned out to be conditional. They wanted me invisible. They made me vanish. But they forgot something. People who have nothing left to lose don't wait politely. They act. And I was done waiting. Maria filed the emergency motion on May 8th. I signed the paperwork in her office, still wearing the same gray cardigan I'd slept in for 3 nights. The form was thick, 37 pages, 2 affidavits, 6 exhibits. At the bottom, my name, not Marie L. Carter, not Mom, just me. The motion was simple, in theory, brutal in execution. Freeze the property, challenge the trust transfer, and initiate a forced liquidation of the house Daniel thought was his crown jewel. He wouldn't see it coming. That morning, Maria emailed notice to his counsel, a stiff white shoe firm he couldn't afford 6 months ago. That told me Taylor had reached into someone's trust fund. I smiled when I saw the name. I'd worked with them once. Cold, expensive, arrogant. Perfect for a losing case. Within 24 hours, the court granted a preliminary hearing date. June 10th, Orange County Legal Resource Center. Mediation required. They'd be forced to show up, sit across from me, hear the list of charges laid out loud. On the record, in front of a court officer, no interruptions. Maria and I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. Every document was printed twice, labeled, tabbed, sealed. We had timelines. We had receipts. We had the POA comparison side by side, mine in ink, theirs in cheap imitation. We had bank transfers Taylor initiated under false emails, pulled from the iPad she forgot to wipe. But I had something more powerful than evidence. I had intent. I had the pattern, the setup, the pressure, the isolation. It was more than fraud. It was strategy. Maria said, once they realize what we have, they'll try to settle. I don't want money, I said. You may end up with both. Then I booked a haircut. Nothing drastic, just clean, sharp. I wore a navy blouse I hadn't touched since 2019 and black flats with a low heel. The morning of the mediation, I walked into the building like I was going to a job interview I already knew I'd win. Because I wasn't scared of facing them. I was scared of what might have happened if I hadn't. They thought the slap was the worst thing they did to me. But they were wrong. The real damage came with the smiles. And now, they'd have to answer for every one of them. The room was all glass and tension. June 10th, Orange County Legal Resource Center. Conference Room B. 1 long table, 4 chairs on each side. A court officer at the far end, silent and stone-faced. Maria sat to my right, her briefcase already open, tabs glinting like teeth. Daniel walked in first. Wrinkled collar, pale face, eyes like a child caught stealing but too old to be forgiven. Taylor followed. White blazer, tight smile. Her perfume hit the air before she did something expensive, synthetic, overcompensating. She looked at me and said, "Hi there," like we were strangers at a garden party. I didn't respond. Not to her. Not to Daniel, who avoided my eyes and fidgeted with his cuff like it might unwrite the last 6 months. Their lawyer, some junior associate barely older than a college intern, sat down and cleared his throat like this was just business. It wasn't. The court officer clicked the recorder. "Proceed," Maria led. She started with the forged power of attorney, walking through the handwriting discrepancies and the notary inconsistencies. Then the LLC filing shell company under my maiden name registered to their address. Taylor blanched. Daniel looked at the table like he wanted to crawl under it. Then came the emails, the travel receipts, the spa charges, the HELOC application tied to my apartment. Each document placed on the table like a stone added to their grave. And finally, the texts. Maria pulled out a screenshot printed in full color. Taylor texting a realtor, "Once she croaks, we can list ASAP." Taylor went silent. Her lawyer glanced at her, then at the page, then turned a sickly gray. We weren't aware of this submission." "Doesn't matter," the officer said. "It's admissible." Maria kept going. Clear, clean, unemotional. When she was done, she leaned back and let silence spread. I looked at Daniel. He looked at me for the first time in months. "Mom," he started. "We didn't mean—" "Don't," I said. "Just one word. It stopped him. Taylor, always quick with a deflection, tried to laugh. Verbal permission isn't legally binding in real estate, right? Her voice cracked halfway through. Maria didn't even answer. She just passed the officer the final document, a notarized affidavit from me, stating I never gave consent for any transaction involving my apartment, my name, or the LLC. The officer read it slowly, then nodded. "This will move forward." Taylor blinked, stunned. Daniel whispered something to her, panicked, but it was too late. The house of cards they built wasn't falling, it was collapsing. The ruling didn't come with shouting, just one firm voice and the weight of the law. "The power of attorney," the judge said, sliding the forged document aside, "is fraudulent and void. No authority was granted, no rights were transferred." Taylor didn't blink. She sat like a statue, hands folded too tight. Daniel looked like a man waiting for a verdict he already knew was coming. "The trust assignment is also invalid," the judge continued. "The deed remains legally co-owned by the plaintiff, who retains original title rights." Then, looking directly at me, "You have full discretion over the property, Ms. Carter." It landed like a gavel to the spine. The house was mine. I didn't smile. Instead, I leaned toward the microphone and said, "I'd like to file immediate notice of intent to sell." Daniel jerked upright. "What?" "No." "Wait," Taylor cut in. "That wasn't discussed. We've lived there for 5 years. Maria's tone was razor thin. "Your occupancy was based on invalid documents, an unlawful control. She's under no obligation to leave it in your name or in your hands." The judge nodded. "Sale motion approved. Proceeds to be allocated solely to the legal owner. Any and all debts incurred under fraudulent use of her name will remain the responsibility of the defendants." Daniel's face collapsed in real time. Because it wasn't just about losing the house. It was losing the shield. The debts, credit cards, business loans, the shell company default weren't going with me. They were staying with them, frozen accounts, pending IRS review. A lien request already filed by the bank they tried to fool. They had no house to borrow against anymore. Taylor finally broke. Her voice cracked like cheap glass. "Can we at least get some of our things?" "Just the furniture. The couch. Everything inside the home now belongs to the seller," the judge said flatly. "You may file a personal property claim through standard channels, but you are not to set foot inside without legal escort." They stood. Daniel mumbled something like, "This isn't fair." I watched them walk out of that glass box. No keys, no leverage, no plan. 10 days later, I signed the sale contract. After fees, I walked away with $843,000. Daniel and Taylor were left behind in an empty rental, facing over $120,000 in combined debt, 3 flagged credit reports, and a fraud investigation with both civil and criminal implications. And me? I didn't just take the house back. I took everything they thought I was too old to protect. It hit the news within days. Someone at the courthouse leaked the filing, a quiet title reversal, tied to elder financial abuse, fraudulent transfer of assets, and a shell company using a mother's maiden name. The local station picked it up first. By the time I saw the segment, it had over 60,000 views. They aired it under the title, "Slapped, Swindled, and Stronger. Local Woman Reclaims $2 million, Property from Her Own Son." There was footage of me walking out of the courthouse, stone-faced, holding the manila folder Maria handed me. They blurred my face, but not Taylor's, not Daniel's. The report included screenshots of the fraudulent LLC filing, a shot of Taylor's now-defunct coaching site, and an interview with a real estate fraud expert who said, "This is one of the more egregious betrayals I've seen." The level of planning involved, it wasn't a mistake, it was a strategy. The story spread. By the weekend, a national daytime show picked it up for a segment on elder financial abuse. Daniel's LinkedIn was flooded with comments. Taylor's wellness Instagram, which she'd tried to wipe clean, got reposted on Reddit with the caption, "This you?" They couldn't hide. Parents at their old church stopped inviting them. Her Pilates studio refunded memberships in light of recent events. One of Daniel's former co-workers called in to the news station anonymously and said, "He always acted like he came from money. Turns out, he just stole it." Their shame wasn't private anymore. It had gone viral. And me? I didn't give interviews. I didn't pose for pictures. I didn't need applause. I needed space. On July 15th, I stood in the center of my new living room. Sunlight poured in through floor-to-ceiling windows. Catalina Island lay quiet beyond the glass, blue, wide, mine. A padded envelope had arrived that morning. Inside, my wedding photo, bent at the corner, no note. I placed it on the mantel beside the deed. It was done. Epilogue: I never went back to the apartment. It had sheltered me when no one else would, but I'd outgrown its 640 square feet and the pain that clung to its corners. I sold it quietly. Used the funds to buy this place, a sunlit condo overlooking the sea. No one here calls me Mom with a smirk. They just call me Marie. And that's more than enough.